Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today to offer an amendment to restore a key military construction and force protection project that was removed by amendment from the President's budget last week in the Readiness Subcommittee markup. As most of you are aware, the Department of Defense has decided to further review the Navy's earlier decision to establish a second nuclear aircraft carrier home port at Naval Station Mayport, Florida, within the 2010 QDR. However, the current leadership in the Department of Defense, Secretary Gates, Deputy Secretary Lynn, have declared that there, at the very least, must be an alternate location dock for our nuclear carriers in the case of natural or man-made emergency at Naval Station Norfolk. Today, as we debate this amendment, the United States Navy has an alternative docking location for every ship in the Navy except for aircraft carriers stationed on the East Coast of the United States. In order to provide this emergency docking location, the Navy requested $46.3 million in fiscal year 2010 budget for channel dredging at Navy Station Mayport. Right now, Navy Station Mayport is dredged at 42 feet. For a fully loaded nuclear aircraft carrier to pull into Mayport without tide restrictions, the carrier must be 8 feet deeper at 50 feet. This project is not about Florida versus Virginia, nor about the ongoing QDR. As we used to say in the military, let's look at this from the 30,000 feet level. I'm from Florida. I'm about 400 miles away from Jacksonville. I'm in South Florida. The proponents of the opponents, I should say, of my amendment are from Virginia. Let's just assume for the record that I'm advocating for the people of Florida. They're advocating for the people of Virginia. That's great. Take that off the record, and now let's look at this issue without Virginia and without Florida, and as a national security issue for the entire United States. In fact, Secretary Gates recently wrote Virginia Senator Jim Webb last year when challenged on this issue, quote, "Having a single home port has not been considered acceptable on the West Coast and should not be considered acceptable on the East Coast." So this is about national security and ensuring that we provide our Navy leaders with the operational flexibility that they need. It is not flexible or fundamentally practical or even really smart to say to the Navy or the people of this country as a whole that if something would impede deployment of carriers in the single East Coast port, that carriers from the West Coast would have to deploy around South America to get to the Atlantic Ocean because they're too big to go through the Panama Canal. The President of the United States, if something would happen at Norfolk, Virginia, where the 5 carriers are, would have to look the American people in the eye and say, we have no aircraft carriers deployable because we had all aircraft carriers at one place. The aircraft carriers are too valuable of an asset not to provide backup docking locations. Again, this is not a political issue about Florida versus Virginia. I am advocating for Florida. My opponents are advocating for Virginia. This is about President Barack Obama and his administration saying we need an alternative site. Secretary Gates and the Department of Defense saying we need an alternative site. The Secretary of the Navy and all the commanders and the operational leaders of the Navy saying we need an alternative site. Only the delegation members from Virginia are saying that we shouldn't need an alternative site. So this is about the delegation from Virginia versus the President, the Secretary of Defense, the Navy, the entire United States, solely for the purpose of the delegates of Virginia. How can we honestly say that all of those people are wrong and the delegation from Virginia is right. Vote yes on the Rooney-Miller amendment to restore funding to dredge the channel at Mayport for military construction and to protect, in a more pragmatic way, the East Coast aircraft carrier fleet. Thank you very much. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.